Okay, this is chapter 11, and we're going to go over eye anatomy. And while for testing purposes, it's not on the test, however, I think it's helpful for understanding the rest of the information in chapter 11. So we're going to go through a quick eye anatomy, and it won't be extremely thorough, but enough to get you through the rest of the chapter and understand what's going on. Which, fortunately for us, many of the names make sense. So let's just start off with the basic eye. We've got an eye here. Okay, and this is going to be your medial part. Here would be your nose, and then you've got your eyelid underneath. Okay, so from the beginning, and my person looks kind of creepy. So let's try and fix that. There we go. Nah, okay. And from the beginning, we have the eyelids themselves. The eyelids themselves are palpebral. All right, and that means eyelid. So when you see that word palpebral, you're talking about eyelid. Conjunctivi is the clear mucosal membrane over everything, okay? So conjunctivi is pretty much over everything. Now, something I was confused, okay. Something I was confused about was I thought the cornea went over the entire eye, and I was completely wrong about that. The cornea just covers this portion of the eye, so your iris in. That's where you'll find the cornea. The limbus is actually where it meets, L-M-B-U-S, and limbus just means border. That's all that means. But it's important to note that these are two different structures. This isn't the cornea all the way through. The cornea only covers your iris and your pupil. And we'll draw another picture to make it so that it's a little bit clearer. Either way, where the cornea meets the sclera, that's the white part of your eyes, hopefully I'm spelling that correctly, is called the limbus. And again, limbus just means border. That's all that means. So the limbus is a border, conjunctiva is the clear part, alright, sclera is the white part. From there, pretty much everything is going to use those words. So you have the bulbar conjunctivi. And like I said, conjunctivi is just a mucosal lining. So obviously you know that mucosal lining is not on the outside of your eye necessarily, but here we're referring to the inside, the inner lid of the eye. And that's the inner lid of the eye. So underneath this is where you'll have that mucosal membrane. And of course that's important because otherwise you would have extremely dry, irritated eyes. Tarsal plates. Tarsal plates are actually inside the eye, and they just give it some structure. So this is, again, tarsal and then plates. So just think about the plates part. It just gives it structure, and it's actually formed kind of like a plate. The other part that I actually didn't know is I always thought that tears came from right here, and they don't even remotely come from there. Tears come from here. These are little glands that line everything, and those little glands are called Alright, so they're actually coming from, tears are coming from here, and draining into little glands over here. So you have two little holes right over here, that it drains into. And we'll go over that too. The levator, okay, and again, so the levator palpebral is just something that's moving your eyelid, okay? So think of elevation and then eyelid. So when I say elevation, eyelid, what does that mean? That means the muscle that moves the eyelid. Too easy, right? Obviously, your fluid, now there is some other benefits to this fluid that comes out of the glands up here, and it's antimicrobial, and of course it prevents dryness, and it gives the eye moisture. Of course, the other thing is that when you get something in your eye, it allows or assists things in getting out of your eye. So in that way, it's kind of protective. Besides the fact that it's antimicrobial as well. Okay, so you have lacrimal glands, and the lacrimal gland is actually in the orbit of the eye. So let's say we had the eyebrow up here. Lacrimal gland is going to be in the orbit of the eye. And that's the gland that provides fluid. It drains from this gland, and this is really nice because the holes here are pretty much look like the word punch. Maybe off the screen. No. All right. So this is and again, I just think of punch, but lacrimal. Excuse me. Punching. Okay. So holes like you punched it out. From there, it drains into a sac, and it eventually goes into the nose. So it goes into your nose, which is why your nose runs. So from the get-go, so the glands up here, your lacrimal gland, right? It drains out here. It goes over the fluid, the entire area of your eye, so that when you blink, you have the moisture spreads all throughout your eye. All right, and it drains into these things. Again, I just think of them as like punched out holes, but lacrimal punches, which from there drains out and into another sac, and eventually leads you to the nose. Okay, so just to recap, palpebral means eyelid. If I say palpebral, levator, then I'm talking about the muscle that moves the eyelid. If I say conjunctive, think mucous membrane. All right, conjunctive is going to cover your eye, but it also is going to line the inside of your eye. And then sclera is the white part, or think of scared white. Fluid is antimicrobial. It provides moisture and protection. So that'll get you to the front part of the eye. Let's go over a side view of the eye. Okay, so side view of the eye. As we know, the eye is round, or hopefully. We have an optic nerve that goes out the back, and obviously has a nerve in it. Now we have that tarsal plate up here, and the muscles that also work here. The glands that line it would be approximately right there. You're going to have your lens. And as you know, your pupil isn't like a black dot, it's a hole. Alright, so stop thinking about that like a black dot. It's not. Alright, it's just a hole. And then you're going to have cornea that comes out. And again, cornea doesn't cover the whole thing. I know I always thought it covered the whole thing. It doesn't. Your cornea is just going to cover the part that is your iris and pupil. From there, the sclera is taking over, and that's the white part of your eye, or scared white. Okay. And of course, your gland would be up here. Alright, the ciliary bodies change the lens thickness for focus. Basically, when I change this, we have two functionings here. First of all, we have the iris or the pupil, and as we know, pupils either dilate or constrict, and that allows more or less light in. So, if I'm looking at something very close, I need less light to look at it. But if I'm looking at something very far away, I need more light. So you'll find that as it comes closer, your eyes will contract. All right, as the object that you're looking at is farther away, your eyes will dilate. And so we need something to control the amount of light coming into the eye, and then we need something to control the movement of the lens, because that is also going to help you focus. Now, if you have nearsightedness or farsightedness, it's usually because something with your lens is wrong. All right, so think about the lens like a magnifying glass. The lens is like a magnifying glass, and we have to kind of adjust that magnifying glass, and we're going to do that through the ciliary bodies. All right, so that is going to adjust your lens to be able to focus at different points. Okay. And you're going to have two different types of fluid. You have your you have your fluid that flows pretty much from your lens backwards to your we call it the fundus is what we see, but to the retina. And then you have your something filling the anterior chamber. So the oops, I spelled that a little bit wrong. All right, so this is pretty much if you ever have seen Kill Bill where she steps on that eyeball and all the gel squeezes out. All right, that's that fluid that's inside of your eye. All right, and it's that clear gel, and it just gives it structure, space, and it's gonna allow light in to hit, so it hits the back of the eye. So when we're looking at something out here, it's gonna come in, and of course it will be backwards if you don't know that already. It will be backwards and displayed back here. So you have your the fluid that's back here, and then you have your aqueous humor that fills the anterior and posterior chamber of the eye. Sorry, I was just double checking something. So you have a chamber up here, and you have a chamber back here. Obviously, anterior to the front, posterior to the rear. And this is called your aqueous humor. All right. And it's just another type of fluid that fills that area. This is actually produced by the ciliary bodies. So if you want to think about it, either goes A or V, or an acute amount and a very large amount, or vast amount. So A is a little bit, B is a lot more. There's a canal that filters this fluid through, so it goes up and down and around. And the reason that it does that is because it maintains pressure that way. When you have issues where you have pressure in the eye, glaucoma, it's because of a buildup of fluid here. But basically, this fluid goes from posterior chamber to anterior chamber, posterior to anterior, posterior to anterior. And that's that aqueous humor. And again, it's created by the ciliary bodies that adjust the lens. That canal, let's see, that canal is called the canal, canal of Wilhelm. And I'm sorry, I've drawn that a little bit confusing. That goes through the pupil, all right? Because remember, the pupil is a hole. Let's move that a little bit. All right, so it goes through the pupil and back down. All right, and again, it goes. Would be your anterior chamber, and this would be your posterior chamber. All right, so it goes through the pupil, back down, through the pupil, back down. So what you see at the back part when you check the eye with the ophthalmoscope is what we refer to as the fundus, and that really had me messed up. But basically, what you're seeing is the fundus, and for most people, all it looks like is red. But you should have your optic nerve back here, and then of course little vessels coming off of it. They all lead to and from. And if you can, there'll be a couple of other little structures here as well. But the main thing that you'll see is that is the retina. And we call this the fundus. This is pretty much everything you see through it, but it's really the retina in your optic nerve, and if you can see it, your fog. But a lot of times you can't see that. Okay, so that's the basic structure of the eye. If you can just remember that the palpebral is your eyelid, and that conjunctive is a membrane, that you've got fluid in and out of the eye, and then that pretty much covers everything that you need to know for the most part. Now, of course, you're going to need this for eye examinations where you'll be looking at your veins and things of that, the color of the back of the eye, but other than that, that is just the basic anatomy of the eye. Of course, there's a lot more you could go over, but that'll get you through at least chapter 11.